Hello and welcome to the next episode of Matt and Todd Go to the Movies, the podcast where Matt and Todd go see a movie at our local Regal cinema, and then we talk about it in the parking lot in Matt's Honda Pilot. We discuss those important things like, should you see this movie, should you not see this movie, should you see it in theater, should you wait till streaming, did we hate it, did we love it, are we frustrated, are we happy, and we try to talk about all these things and capture the essence of who we are. I am Todd Domer.
And I'm Matt Malloy, and yes, we're here to capture the essence of who we are by talking about movies.
Yep.
So, we saw a movie tonight. It is, in fact, called Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. An interesting premise, which we'll get into. But first I'll mention the one person who's famous in this movie.
I guess so, yeah.
Pete Davidson is in this movie, playing himself, I think.
Because that's all he can play, because he is very talentless.
Right. So, that's the end of that list. What is this movie about? Well, the premise of this movie is that there's a hurricane coming somewhere, and a group of people shows up and decides they're going to ride out this... Well, they
have a hurricane party.
They're having a hurricane party.
Yeah.
There's lots of booze. There's lots of drugs. And yeah, so you start out with, I think there's 7 people to start out with.
I think so.
Yeah. And so they're, settling in. The main 2 characters are this girl, Sophie, and her partner named B. And they're there. B doesn't know anyone. And anyway, they come on the scene and, do party things and hanging out. And then they decide to play this game called Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. Which, for some of our listeners, you may know this game as a slimmed down version of the game Mafia. It's very similar to that.
Yeah, but what else? It's similar to that, but what game did we play with the students when we were leaders? It wasn't Mafia, but it was exactly this game. And I can't remember what we called it.
Oh. It wasn't Mafia?
No.
I thought it was.
No, because Mafia has so many different other components to it. This is just straight, someone's the killer, all the lights go out. You got to touch someone, and then you can kill them, and then it's up to everyone else to find the body.
Okay.
And we played it a lot, but I just, for the life of me, cannot remember the name, and it wasn't Bodies, Bodies, Bodies.
Manhunt? Is it called
Manhunt?
Manhunt?
That sounds right.
Well, anyway, that's how they play this game in the show. There's added things too, where there's something about slapping and drinking.
Oh yeah, there's a drinking component to it. Yeah,
that is added on to the game that I'm used to playing. But anyway,
let's just say those aren't official rules. Maybe they just threw it in for a whole spice of life.
Right. So they decide to play this game, and one person is designated the killer, and they go around and try and it's a secret, but they go around and try and kill people by touching their backs, and then that person has to fall down and pretend they're dead. And then if that body, quote unquote body, not really a dead person at this point, is found, somebody says bodies, 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 and the lights come back on, and
ours was screaming dead body.
Yes,
if memory serves.
And then there's a voting round where people accuse each other, and they try and vote on who is the killer, and that person gets sent off, and the dead person can't talk, and they're sent off. And then if they're right about who the killer is, then they win, but that didn't happen in this game. So anyway, that's what Bodies, Bodies, Bodies is. It actually doesn't feature that prominently in this movie. They play one round of it, and they talk about it a little bit, but that's about it.
Yeah.
But then they start to find actual dead people from their group, and throughout the movie, there's different people keep turning up dead, and different people are accusing each other of causing the deaths, and there's a lot of psychological abuse that happens.
Is there? Jeez.
Based on like historical things between the characters, like they're trying to hurt each other with words quite frequently, and anyway, people just get eliminated until you're down to like the last couple people, and then the movie kind of ends. So
Yeah.
there's no real good resolution to actually who the killer is.
Well, it's like the quote unquote truth comes out,
Yes.
but take that as you will.
Right.
There is like you do kind of find out everything that happened,
Right.
but we can't really go into it without ruining it. So
So we won't.
yeah.
So that
Although one of our listeners had a suggestion for that, as I was talking to Mr. Alec Liviratos, where he was like, maybe sometimes we can, as we're going through the definition of the movie, or the definitions, what happened and stuff like that, if we wanted to talk about spoilers, we could give a fair warning and be like, here's spoilers are coming, fast forward to a certain point or whatever, and then let that fly, and then come back around.
we could do that.
It would certainly be hard, because that would take, we would have to, when we post the podcast, we'd have to post what time to re-jump back in so no one comes in early. But it might be a way around our
No spoilers policy.
rules. Because he says, I don't know if there's anyone who agrees with him, so listeners, feel free to comment on this. He says that some movies, he just wants to know what happens because he knows that he will not see the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm like, you know what, that's a fair point. I'm like that too. Like, I don't want to see where the crawdads sing, but I want to know who the murderer is or whatever. Like, I'd like to know the mystery of that movie without having to actually read the book or see the movie. So, which I guess I could look up myself, but if someone just told it to me, that'd be kind of cool too.
Right.
Something to shake up there. Let us know what you think about that, listeners.
Sure.
To the two people who typically comment, but anyone can comment.
Right. Well, the murderer in Where the Crawdads Sing is, of course, the Crawdads.
That's true.
They rise up, and it's a crawdad
twist. Yeah.
revolution.
If that were going down, I'd see that movie.
Yeah. Well, you'll have to look it up and see what really happens.
Don't worry, and then I'll talk about it on our next podcast.
All right. So, so that's kind of the plot of this movie. It's like a young people party movie. I don't know how old they're supposed to be. I'm going to say early 20s.
Yeah, I would say either college age or right out of college is where they're supposed to be.
Right. So Todd, bodies. What did you think?
It's probably no surprise, but I did not like this movie. And it stems from a fundamental thing to me of there's no person to really root for in this movie. Like, they're all kind of trashy human beings, maybe besides one. And maybe besides two. But you don't even really get to know them well enough to even make that decision. But people are so toxic and mean in this movie, and it's like if it's any kind of a true representation of the youth of this age, then we are in trouble as a society. Like, it is just like I through the whole movie, I'm like, man, this is not representing what people are. But then I'm like, oh, maybe it is, and I just don't know. But it's just, and that's a me personal thing, because I have a hard time getting into a movie if I can't root for someone. Mm-hmm. And certainly during this movie, it's like, you're introduced to these people, and in the beginning of the movie, you're like, okay, well, let's find out who these characters are. And then very, very fast, you're like, okay, you're all trash. You're all trash to each other. You're all drugged up. Like, who gets together for a hurricane party anyway? Like, when apparently you're, like, very close to the hurricane. Like, I was like, there's a lot of things to, as I think about this movie rationally, to just say this is not good. Like, I don't like this movie. It is definitely not a secret that I strongly dislike Pete Davidson. I do not think he's a good actor. I think he can only be himself, and that's it. And this movie was straight up like that too. He's a trashy person in this movie, and I'm sure he's a trashy person in real life. So, so the acting, I guess the acting is okay at times, but I got pulled out of the movie multiple times where, like, some murder has happened, and then it's like a murder's happened, there's no real processing of what's going on. It's just straight, like, attack everyone. Like, and I just don't, this does not represent people very well. And so the acting was okay, I guess. I don't feel like anyone was, like, super good. Like, I wouldn't certainly hang any awards on this movie and the acting for sure. Everyone was just kind of there. I guess they did okay enough to make me go, you're not complete trash while watching the movie. But, like, it's hard for me to find good things about this movie. But I'll try. I think this is kind of, I would say, even though it's a whodunit, it is a pretty original whodunit. Like, I think. I have a hard time processing that without being able to talk about the ending. I think we've had movies similar to this. Not that I'm going to name them or that I could remember them right now. But I think what's going on is pretty original. It's just like, when you're in, like, a situation like this, or you're watching a movie like this, like, for me, it's like, I come back to the point of, I need someone to root for. Like, in a movie where people are dropping like flies, I'm like, I get to the point where I'm like, oh, you might as well just kill everyone, because, like, whatever. So I can't say go see this movie. Like, I can't say go see it in theaters. I didn't hate it, but I certainly didn't like it. I'm somewhere, like, it's going to be below average, I think, in my mind, but there's nothing grabbing me saying, hey, tell people to go see this movie. It's certainly a movie to wait for streaming. I think this is the perfect wait for streaming movie. It's not worth your $15 ticket. And I, like, I just, like I said, if this actually represents what the youth is like today, that's sad. That is real sad. So I guess I left a little depressed about maybe the future for people. I don't know. It is just a movie, but with, like, YouTube and TikTokers and all that kind of stuff, like, some of the events in this movie are not so far-fetched that I couldn't see idiots doing this. And that's what these people are. They're all stupid, they're all idiots, they're all mean. Except for maybe one person. So, yeah. I wasn't a fan. I mean, I would assume that there's people out there who want to see this movie, and this movie's for them. I guess in that small sect of people, go see it. But even from, like, this is supposed to be a comedy horror movie or a horror comedy. I wasn't scared at all, and I certainly didn't laugh, really. So, it failed on both of those parts. There is really not... I may have chuckled at one thing because it was just me. And maybe I was forcing myself to chuckle because I felt awkward. Because I was like, I'm supposed to be laughing at this stuff. And it just wasn't there. If it's supposed to be a comedy horror and you're supposed to laugh, you're supposed to be scared, missed on both of those points. That would mean to me that the script was not good. If that's what it was going for. So, yeah. It's a movie about trashy people, and it's trash. So, that's me. Matt, I'm interested to see your thought, or hear your thoughts on this movie. You're more of the horror guy in this car right now than I am.
Right. Well, I'll say this. This is not a good example of a horror movie.
No, yeah.
It's more of an example of like a whodunit type of, yes, there's a murderer loose, but it's not like horrific murders are happening.
Right.
There's not any kind of creative death things that are, I think, a hallmark of a good horror movie is you have people dying in interesting ways.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be suspenseful, but at no point was I like gripping my seat like, oh, is this suspenseful?
Right. So no points for the horror part of it. So here's, I think, the best thing about this movie. After having been involved in multiple games of Manhunt or whatever it was, or Mafia,
Yeah.
and thinking about how the voting thing works and how people kind of accuse each other.
Okay.
And how people throw out like random stuff about personalities of different people. Like if you were trying to capture what it's like during one of those games, okay, that plays a role here. And if that's what you were trying to do, you did an okay job of like capturing that kind of at times mean-spirited, at times very harsh characterizations of other people. And that does come up throughout the movie, even though they're not playing the game anymore. They're accusing each other of being the actual murderer.
Right.
And they're still using the same kind of like dirty pool tactics to get people on their side.
Yeah. Here's something you did that's not really great, so you must be the murderer because you suck at life in this area.
Exactly.
That's a good point. Fair point, Matt.
Yeah.
I overlooked that. I'm willing to reevaluate while you're talking my score.
Okay. Well, but I think that's one of the only good things about that. That's it. One of the only things this movie does well.
For sure.
It is not great at, kind of leading you down the path and having these people die and whatever. Like the story is pretty weak. The acting, yes, it's okay. And I'll give kudos to part of the story where you don't really know what's happening until maybe the very end. And then you find out some things, at least. And then some things I really didn't like about it. There's just like some random, there's many random elements that are just kind of tossed in. And I'll tell you two of them. There's not the only two. But like at some point a gun appears. And we don't really know where the gun came from. No one knew about this gun.
Right. How did the person who grabbed the gun know about the gun?
Right.
Considering the owner of the house was like, yeah, we don't have any guns here.
Right. Exactly. So maybe they were lying and it was their gun, but who knows, right? But there's a couple different times where things like that happen. And at the very end of the movie, I'm not giving anything away here, but like there's just kind of this throwaway line. This person walks in and is like, oh, what happened? Who hadn't really been there the whole time. And one of the characters says, they say nothing, and then their phone starts buzzing and beeping, and they're like, I have reception. And there's no reason, like it seems like that's supposed to mean something.
Right.
And it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, this movie also doesn't know how cell phones work.
Right.
Like, your Wi-Fi, unless you're in a total blind spot, does not mean you still can't make calls.
Right.
Like, so the power goes out in this movie, and of course everyone can't use their phone because they're like, the Wi-Fi is out. Then it's like, I got no reception. But this is a mansion. We don't know where it's at, but you got to imagine that if rich people are going to live in this area, they're going to want to be able to make calls. Like,
right.
So it's just like, well, as soon as the Wi-Fi went out because of the power outage and everyone's like, I can't connect. It's like, okay, yeah, you wouldn't because the Wi-Fi's out. Then it's like, I can't make any calls. I'm like, okay, well, those two things don't add up. Like,
right. It is getting harder and harder for horror writers to deal with the increasingly connected nature of our lives.
Absolutely.
And so you've got to figure out how you're going to handle that. They didn't handle it very well. They kind of hand waved and said, well, we're in the middle of nowhere, so we don't have cell service. Well, where is that today, really?
Yeah, exactly.
Like
you would have to be like seriously like in a log cabin someplace way out there.
Yeah.
Not a mansion, and what is presumed to be probably several mansions around, but they each have land.
Right.
Like, it's
Right.
not like they were some in secluded suburbia, like, place that was like, it's only one house for 50 miles.
Right.
Like,
So anyway, all that to say is, like, what I'll say about this movie is you tried, and I'll say there was, like, it's sort of interesting that you brought this game into it, and that's maybe only interesting to people who have played a game like this. If you haven't,
that's true. You're going to be kind of...
then it's just going to be like people being mean to each other,
Right.
which is a lot of what happens in those games.
Yeah. When you've played these games and you've seen people be real mean to each other, you're like, okay, I can see that.
Right. But so you tried, but you didn't come through. And to me, the ending was unsatisfying and unbelievable. But one of the things... So, Todd, you mentioned having someone to root for.
Yeah.
And I found myself early on in this movie having someone to root against. And that was Pete Davidson's character.
Sure.
So I did root against him, and that was like, oh, great. He's going to be like this terrible person the whole movie, and I'll just be able to sit here and hate him, and that'll win me over to this movie. But he's the first person to die.
Yeah.
And so I was happy that happened in the movie. I was happy that his character died, but...
So there's only one person I truly rooted for in this movie, and that was the killer. Because I was like, these people are trash. Like, I don't care about these people.
Yes. So I would say, yeah, you don't need to see this in a theater, and I agree with Todd. You can stream it if you're a big Pete Davidson fan, or...
Yeah.
You know, you like rich people being trash to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the groups that are gonna enjoy.
Yeah, like someone's legit insult to someone in this movie was, your parents are upper middle class.
Right.
And then it was like taken as like, no, they're not. You better take that back. It's like,
right.
Okay.
Yeah. It was, yes. So anyway,
maybe if a movie like this came out back when like The Simple Life came out with like Paris Hilton and all that kind of stuff, when that stuff was going on, maybe it like would connect a little bit more to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Anywho. Well, Matt, how many slaps to the face followed by a shot of vodka would you give this movie, which is how they started the game of Bodies, which I've never seen or heard of before.
Right.
But I'll also say this movie kind of made me want to play that game again.
Yeah, true.
I don't know where adults go to play this kind of game, but...
They go to the middle of nowhere in a hurricane, Todd. That's where they go. Well, so... This movie didn't deliver where it needed to, and so I'm going to give it a below average rating. I'm going to give it a rating of 2 slaps to the face followed by a shot of vodka. Just enough to have some pain and get a little tipsy. But not enough to actually enjoy yourself.
Fair. So I'm gonna take you down this rabbit hole with me.
Yes.
I think I was willing to give this movie a 1.7, which is where I kind of started, and then you had me reevaluate, and I was like, you know what, maybe I'll go a smidge above that because of this whole like aspect of like this game really does play out on a larger scale, and that's what they were going for, and I'm like, all right, I'll give them a little kudos for that. But then I remembered something while we were talking about the movie that drove me nuts.
Yes.
And that brought my rating down to a 1.5.
Oh. Okay.
And that is, there are several points in this movie where the lights are out and it's dark and people are using their phones as lights. Totally get it. I'm with you. However, there's definitely a couple times where someone's hiding or they're like sneaking around or whatever, and someone's coming, so they go to dim their light and the light is still there in a pitch dark room. Like, and it just takes a quick, like, look around of the room, and you're like, hey, what's that light behind the couch or whatever, hiding behind that plant?
Right.
It's like, do you guys not get how light works? Like, if everything is dark and you shine a tiny little light, if you're still holding onto your cell phone and that's giving off light, it is not going to be hard to find you. But yet several times in this movie, people walk by something or they're in a dark room when you can see this little light and they're like, oh, I guess no one's here. I got to move on. Like,
Right.
It's just like, what the heck? So that frustrated me. So you were at a 1.7. I may have gone up to a 1.9, but no, you fell to a 1.5. So
Okay.
that's where I'm at.
Well, there you have it.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot to sit through this movie.
Yes.
Well, that is going to wrap up this episode of Matt and Todd Go to the Movies, where we reviewed the movie Bodies, Bodies, Bodies.
Bodies.
And we gave it an average rating of 1.75 slaps to the face followed by shots of vodka. That's not a good score.
No. And I've taken a slap to the face from you before.
You have.
Yeah.
That's true. It was quite uncomfortable, I'm sure.
It wasn't pleasant.
Yes. Well, anyway, that's a story for another time. And, yeah, thank you, listeners, for listening. Please keep on doing it. Keep downloading our wonderful and insightful podcast full of gut reactions to movies.
Mm-hmm.
And we will see you next time.
Da 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 da
Da da
da da da.
da da da.